Hey there, everybody. It's time for divisional previews once again. This time for the upcoming 2025 NFL season. I'm Alex, and let's walk through the NFC North to begin these previews this year. What a competitive division last year. Holy cow. I mean, 3 playoff teams. Not only that, but 3 teams who won 11 or more games. That's really special and hard to do as a division. So can they repeat that? That's the big question. Lots of changes in this division. Some coaches, some coordinators, more so coordinators leaving. Couple important changes in the player realm. What do these teams have in store this year? Well, let's find out. Before going team by team, I want to take a look here at the NFC North scheduling this year. Of course, each team in the division will play their 6 divisional games against the other 3 teams in their division. Each team in the NFC North will play every team from the NFC East. They will also play every team from the AFC North. These are the rotational divisions that they're playing on this year. And just what a terrible draw. What a terrible draw. Probably the 2 other most difficult divisions in football outside of their own, and they got to play all of them. It's going to be tough. And then the standings games that are determined based on where you finish in your division. So let's use the Lions, for example. They finished first in the NFC North, so they will host an NFC South team, in this case being the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And they will play on the road against an NFC West and AFC West team. In this case, the division winners, the Los Angeles Rams and the Kansas City Chiefs. So there you go. Tough schedule for the NFC North this year. Let's see how it pans out for each team. And we will begin with the Chicago Bears. I said this last year in my division preview. I said that this Bears team is an upstart Bears team. And well, they are an upstart Bears team again after so much retooling for a second or third year in a row or fourth. It feels like this team is constantly trying to reinvent themselves and find a group of guys that it's going to stick. Because after 2022, they get DJ Moore. They execute that trade with Carolina after getting the first overall pick. That doesn't go well. They get rid of Justin Fields. They draft Caleb Williams with the first overall pick that they did get from Carolina, who finishes with the worst record in the NFL that year. They drafted Rome Odunze. They revamped the coaching staff in a sense. They bring in Shane Waldron. It doesn't work either. And now we have this team with a brand new head coach in Ben Johnson after they fired Matt Eberflus, the first midseason firing in Bears history. But that's the major thing. The coaching staff this year got completely overhauled. The roster itself didn't change too much. Caleb Williams is still there. The top 2 targets are still there. The biggest departure being Keenan Allen. DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, the top 2 receivers, with Olamide Zaccheaus coming in to fill in a 3rd receiver role. But he might get bumped out of that by the rookie receiver Luther Burden, the 3rd out of Missouri. So we'll have to see where that takes him. And now they have a 2 tight end system with Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet. We'll see if Cole Kmet's job kind of is put into jeopardy with how Loveland plays this year. Plus, that offensive line room has improved greatly with guys like Drew Dalman and Joe Tooney, hopefully giving Caleb Williams some more time in the pocket to allow him to, be a number 1 overall draft pick. But I think it's really interesting. And defensively, not too much change. They picked up Grady Jarrett, but that's the biggest pickup on the defensive side of the ball. They keep TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. Jalen Johnson's back for another year. They're going to get Jaquan Brisker back from injury. And the real big question for the Bears this year is, can they get the most out of the talent that they have? Because they most certainly did not last season. The fact that they had a 10-game in-season losing streak, which was tied for the longest in franchise history, with the 2022 team, who was objectively probably 5 times worse. Maybe a little bit of an over-exaggeration, but you get the point. That says a lot. Can this coaching staff hit the ground running and get the most out of this roster? Because if they can get a solid season out of this roster, the more and more players are going to want to come and play in Chicago. So, looking at their schedule, it's a doozy. That road schedule is brutal for a team that finished 5-12 last year. Of course, at Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay, which all could be tough road games this year again. But on top of that, you compound that with road games against Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, San Francisco, if they're good again. Las Vegas is a popular dark horse pick in the AFC to make the playoffs. And then the Cincinnati Bengals, who are going to be an offensive showcase. I mean, their road schedule is absolutely brutal this season. I think that that's going to be a big thing that's going to hold them back. If they can find a way to be a good road team this year, it's going to go a long way into a playoff run potentially. I think that their home schedule is much easier. They can take advantage of that. Dallas, New Orleans, New York, Cleveland. I think that those can be games they can really jump on. But I think 8-9 is probably where I go with it. I was really bullish on the Bears team last year. I went all in on that team. Blew up in my face. They went 5-12. I still have a lot of hope for this Bears team again, but it's different. I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic because with how tough that road slate is, it could be one of those things where a bad road record really keeps them out of the playoffs, and I think that's what's going to happen here. As you see, 1-7 on the road, they're going to win just the game against Vegas, but they're pretty much going to lose every other game on the road. It's really hard to win on the road in this league, and especially against really competent football teams such as the ones that you're seeing here. So I think that they're going to finish 8-9. I think that they can get to 11 wins. By the way, primetime games in gold, other standalone time slot games in orange. I think that they could possibly get a win in San Francisco, depending on how. And I think that game in San Francisco is going to really depend on if the Niners are healthy at that point in the year, because they're either healthy and good or injured and really bad at the end of the years. So I think they get that win against San Francisco. I think they maybe sweep Minnesota. They get a win against Detroit, maybe. Maybe they beat Cincinnati. You know, there are definitely ways, if this team lives up to its fullest potential, to find a couple more wins on this schedule. Now, that being said, if we have something similar to what we saw last year, I think that they could lose to Green Bay again and get swept again by Green Bay. They could lose to Minnesota, get swept there, go 0-6 in division. They could get beat by, say, Dallas or Pittsburgh. So I think that there are a couple games that they can win, but as it stands right now and the way that this looks right now, there doesn't seem to be a one game in particular that they're going to be really heavily favored against that I think they're going to pull out. So 8-9 is what I have right now. We'll see what Ben Johnson can do in his first year as head coach of the Chicago Bears. Next, we have the Green Bay Packers, a team that finished with 11 wins last year, which is a pretty good season regardless of who you ask. The problem is they finished third in their division and were placed as the 7th seed in the NFC last year with 11 wins. If we were still in a 6-team format, they would have missed the playoffs last year, which is unbelievable to think about. Anyways, looking at their roster, Jordan Love's back for another year. Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney return in two of the biggest free agent signings last season. They're entering year 2 in Green Bay. They drafted Matthew Golden out of Texas. I think he instantly competes for that wide receiver 1 spot. I mean, you can order their wide receivers at wherever you want. There really isn't one guy on the team that is favored more than another, which has kind of helped the team a little bit over the years. But they have Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave in their tight end room as well. Matt LaFleur has done a great job as a head coach as well, mainly because he's only missed the playoffs once. He had, 3 13-win seasons in a row to start his head coaching tenure. And now he's really taken over with Jordan Love. This is kind of the big, this is a big season for the Packers. You might not think about it, but with some presidential changes, Mark Murphy stepping down, the new presidential group is going to have to make a decision on whether or not to extend Matt LaFleur here soon. And this season could play a role into their decision. So I don't think it's going to be much of a problem in that sense. But it could potentially have some ramifications if the Packers really underperform this year. I don't think it will, but there always is that possibility in the back of your head. Anyways, going to their schedule now. Again, primetime games in gold, standalone games in orange, for example, the Thanksgiving game against Detroit. I think that this team is going to be above average again. I don't think the Packers are an elite team, but I don't think the Packers by any means are a bad team. I think that they've got a lot of their harder games at home this year as opposed to Chicago and Detroit. They get Washington, Philly, Baltimore, Cincinnati all at home instead of on the road. Chicago and Detroit have to go on the road to play those games. So I think that that's going to help them a lot with a chance to play those games at home, even though I still think that Washington, Philly, and Baltimore all get them this year. I think that they split with Detroit. I think that they get the Cowboys on the road. I think they sweep the Vikings this year. I think that last game against Minnesota, Week 18, is going to have a lot more importance for just playoffs in general than what you might think earlier this year. I think their big win this year is on the road against Denver late in the year. But yeah, I think 10 wins is probably where I have the Packers right now. They could definitely get to 12 wins, beat Arizona on this schedule, beat Cincinnati, there you go, or beat Chicago, or find a way to beat Washington. But I think that there are definitely 12 wins on the schedule for the Packers. But also, I think that if things go south, I don't think it's too much of a steep fall off. I think maybe they lose to Detroit and Denver. Maybe they lose a game to Minnesota instead. But I think that they have a team that is going to be competitive regardless. I don't think that this team really can finish lower than 8 wins. If injuries happen, and major injuries, that's probably the only way that I think I can see the Packers finishing under 8 wins this year. I think that they sit around 10 wins, and that is my prediction for the Green Bay Packers this season. Up next, the Minnesota Vikings, a very interesting team in the league this year with a couple major changes. Sam Darnold, after the 2 stinkers he put up in Week 18 and in the wild card round last year, he is out as quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. In is now second-year quarterback, pretty much got to treat him as a rookie, J.J. McCarthy. So we'll see how the young guy from Michigan, who played a quarter in the preseason before getting hurt, see how he does in NFL action this year. Kevin O'Connell did a phenomenal job last season as a head coach, getting that team to not just the playoffs, but to 14 wins. They return a lot of the same guys, honestly. Aaron Jones back as their running back. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and Jalen Naylor are a great receiver room, in my opinion. I really like TJ Hawkinson as a tight end. They've got a great front 7. I think their linebacking core is elite with Andrew Van Ginkel, Jonathan Grenard, and Ivan Pace. Oh, and not to mention Blake Cashman as well. I think Harrison Smith still being there is a testament to his longevity. The guy has just been there forever. And he's such a great veteran presence for that locker room. Josh Metellus, of course, being a Swiss Army knife on that defensive end as well. So I think the Vikings still have a pretty good roster. I think it really all depends on how well the connection between Kevin O'Connell and J.J. McCarthy is, because the defense can play well, but can the offense find a way to be respectable in their own right? Because it doesn't look like they're going to need to put up 30 points a game to win. They'll need to put up about 24, 25 probably. So looking at their schedule, I think it's really interesting, especially with Jordan Addison being out the first 3 games of the year and being suspended. 4 of their first 5 games are going to be standalone time slots. The first 2 being Monday night and Sunday night football, respectively. The second 2 being road games, technically, against the Steelers and Browns in Dublin and London, respectively. So I think that there's going to be a lot of eyes on the Vikings early, and we'll see if J.J. McCarthy has some growing pains. I do think they get that win against Cincinnati at home. I think they do sweep the 2 weeks in Europe. I think the Steelers and the Browns can be easy pickings, especially since the Vikings did beat Aaron Rodgers in Europe last year in London. They'll play him in Dublin this year. I think that Philly is really their first real test, and it's going to be Jordan Addison's first game in the States this year. He won't play a game in the U.S. until week 7. So I think that they hit a bit of a slump with some tough games against Philly, Detroit, Baltimore. You can say that road game against Green Bay is another really tough one. Then they get a couple wins. They beat the Chargers. I think they beat the Seahawks. I think 8-9 is a bit respectable. Their schedule is a little tougher than, say, Chicago or Green Bay because they finished second in the division last year, so they draw teams like the Chargers and the Seahawks more so than weaker teams in those divisions. But I think they can win 11 games again. I think they really can. They get a win against Detroit this year. They beat the Falcons. They beat the Packers once. That's 11 wins right there. So I think that they can really find a way to get 3 more wins on the schedule. But I also think if J.J. McCarthy really struggles and a couple injuries maybe pile up, I think this team could have a rough go this season, losing to Cincy, losing to the Bears again maybe, lose that game to Seattle in the Sam Darnold revenge game, lose to the Chargers. I think that if all goes wrong for the Vikings, there's a chance they possibly could end up with a lowly 5 wins. I don't think it happens. But with one of the tougher schedules in the league, if J.J. McCarthy really finds himself struggling this year, they will struggle to win a lot of football games. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that they're still going to have some growing pains, but I still think they finish 8-9. Not awful by any means, but definitely a massive step down from what we saw last year for the Vikings. And finally, the Detroit Lions, the back-to-back division champion Detroit Lions. It's been a long time since they've been able to say something like that. Let's take a look at their roster. Funnily enough, the biggest departures on the roster for Detroit aren't any players. It's their 2 coordinators last year. Ben Johnson heading to a division rival to be the head coach for the Chicago Bears. And then Aaron Glenn leaving to be the head coach of the New York Jets. So we'll see what Dan Campbell can do losing his 2 coordinators. The team is still pretty stacked in my opinion. Jared Goff still playing pretty well. They have that 2-headed monster in the backfield with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. 2 great receivers in Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, both who serve totally different purposes but fit well in that offense. Sam Laporta, again, one of the better tight ends in the league. I think this offense is still going to be very good this year. And then Aiden Hutchinson finally comes back. We forget that the Detroit Lions, who went 15-2 last year, had several injuries in their defensive unit, forcing them to play, honestly, some third stringers by the end of the year. So they were completely battered to hell and back last year. Getting back a healthy Aiden Hutchinson, getting back some of these guys is going to be huge. Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, DJ Reed, and Meek Robertson. It's going to be interesting. They don't have Carlton Davis. They get DJ Reed instead. I think that's going to be a very good year for Detroit. Again, they have the talent to win this division for a 3rd straight year. Now, looking at their schedule, I think they're going to take a step back. Now, a step back from last season is expected. They went 15-2 last year. It's hard to go back to. I don't think any team has ever had back-to-back 15-win seasons. So safe to say it's not happening again. But they could go out and prove me wrong. But I think that they run into a couple of tough games in the first half of their schedule. But after their bye week, they're going to turn it on and get some big wins against Washington, Philly, on the road. I think the one game where they slip up would be against the Rams on the road. But playing against Baltimore and Kansas City on the road is tough. I think they go nearly undefeated at home. Tampa, I think, is the only team that gets them again. But yeah, it's still going to be a really good year for the Lions. I think that they probably get one of these 5 games. They lose 4 road games. I think they get one of them that gets them to the ceiling that they have for them at 13-4. But if the loss of Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn is felt very much in this locker room, and they struggle, I think that this team could go through some growing pains and really fall off the map. Lose to Washington and Philadelphia. Lose to the Vikings once. Maybe lose to the Bears once. I mean, there are plenty of games on this schedule that they could totally lose if things don't go their way, which is why the floor, I think, might be a little steep. But 7-5, or 7-10, excuse me, doesn't seem like totally out of the realm of possibility if things go completely wrong. It'd be a colossal failure of a season for the Lions if they finish under 500 after going 15-2 last season. I don't think it happens. I think they're close to their ceiling more than anything. I have 12 wins for the Detroit Lions in 2025. Looking at the division standings, it's the Detroit Lions as the Kings of the North for a third straight year. I think they get the 3 seed in the NFC. Green Bay finishes 10-7, picks up the 7 seed for another season. Meanwhile, Chicago and Minnesota are in a tie at 8-9, though after doing some calculations, the tiebreaker would go to Chicago. So I think that this is where it ends up. And I think that all 4 of these teams have a chance to win this division this year. I think this is one of the few divisions, maybe the only division in the league, where you can realistically explain why each team in this division could potentially win the division this year, and people to kind of understand and get behind you a little bit. So I think that there is a very, very high chance that the division maybe fields 3 playoff teams again. They could totally do that again. But I think that there are 2 teams in specific that are going to try and find their true identity this year, being Chicago and Minnesota. So I think 8-9 would be respectable for those teams this year. Next year, of course, being the big prove-it year for both franchises. But I think the Lions win the division for a 3rd straight year. Anyways, those are my predictions for the NFC North in 2025. I am not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think happens in the North this year? What does the black and blue division have in store for us? Do they field 3 playoff teams? Do the Lions not win the division this year? Do the Packers go on a run and win 13 games this year? Who knows? Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Hit like on the video if you liked it. Hit subscribe if you really liked it. And I will see you all in the next one.